This is the greatest financial experiment in human history. Global debt, the public and private promises stacked on top of each other, has exploded to levels no civilization has ever carried before. Today, the world owes over $300 trillion. To put that into perspective, that is nearly 4 times the size of the entire global economy. It is a stack of obligations that is mathematically unpayable. Governments borrow trillions as if it were nothing. Central banks print money with keystrokes. The entire system has become a giant balancing act where stability depends on the illusion that debt can expand forever without consequence. But history screams the opposite. Debt always has consequences. It distorts behavior, it shifts wealth, and most importantly, it enslaves future generations. The real question is not if this mountain of global debt will cause a crisis, but when, and who will pay the price when the system resets. This is the story of the collateral damage.
For thousands of years, debt was simple. It was a promise. Borrow grain today, pay it back at harvest. But debt has been deliberately crafted into the most profitable product in human history, funding wars, toppling empires, and quietly draining the wealth of ordinary people. Debt is no longer a burden. It is the permanent architecture of the global financial system. Every loan, every government bond, every digital dollar has an IOU invisibly engraved on its surface. The system is built on credit. The moment money became debt, the engine of modern growth was born. Every time you swipe a card or take a loan, new money enters circulation. The system cannot afford for you to be debt-free. If borrowing stops, the money supply shrinks, the economy stalls, and jobs disappear. It is like a shark that must keep swimming or it dies. We are all along for the ride. The tragic irony is that this enormous mountain of debt is celebrated as growth. Politicians point to rising GDP while quietly knowing that the repayment is impossible without breaking the financial contract with their citizens.
The collateral damage of unpayable debt becomes immediately visible when a nation defaults on its foreign obligations. This is where the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, steps in, acting as the global enforcer and debt collector for Western banks and creditors. The crisis exploded in 1982 when Mexico shocked the world by announcing it could not pay its debt. For years, the country had borrowed billions, betting on oil wealth. But when oil prices crashed and interest rates spiked, Mexico's finance minister told the U.S. and the IMF the brutal truth. Mexico was bankrupt. This was the start of the 1980s global debt crisis, revealing the brutal lesson: debt makes you look rich until the bill comes due. Within weeks, panic spread. Investors fled Latin America. Dozens of countries lined up with the same problem. The IMF rushed in with rescue packages, but these were a lifeline disguised as a chain. The loans came with strict conditions, the austerity playbook. Nations were told what to cut, what to privatize, and how to reorder their budgets. The conditions included cutting public spending, freezing wages, devaluing the peso, and liberalizing trade. The rhetoric was about stability and growth. The reality was dependency. Instead of recovery, poverty soared, riots erupted, and Argentina's middle class was shattered in 2001. In Mexico, ordinary people faced currency collapse and hyperinflation. For millions, the IMF was not a savior, but a debt collector for foreign banks. These nations lost sovereignty long before they lost money. The playbook tested in Latin America became the template for developed nations too. Look at Greece after the 2008 financial crisis. Despite being bound to the euro, Greece revealed debts it couldn't pay. The Troika, the European Central Bank, the European Commission, and the IMF stepped in. The result was misery for the population and security for the creditors. Pensions were slashed, hospitals ran out of supplies, and jobs vanished. Greece's economic sovereignty was dissolved, with key decisions dictated from Brussels and Washington. The lesson is stark. When debt piles too high, sovereignty becomes negotiable. When the numbers don't add up, someone else will decide your future.
While sovereign defaults inflict immediate, visible collateral damage, the world's largest debts, particularly the $34 trillion debt held by the U.S., are paid off through invisible theft. Since the debt cannot be repaid honestly, the government must choose one of the bitter paths: default, austerity, or inflation. The preferred path is always inflation, the silent tax. It is politically easier than default and ensures governments are funded. Inflation silently reduces the real value of what is owed by debasing the currency. When prices rise, your savings lose purchasing power, but your government's debt shrinks by the same measure. It is a betrayal of the financial contract. This trick is not modern. 2,000 years ago, Rome bankrupted itself by using the same technique. Emperors faced endless wars and bloated spending, leaving the treasury empty. They turned to debasement. They mixed the silver denarius with cheap copper, issuing coins that looked the same but bought less. At first, the fraud worked, but soon prices exploded. Once the currency collapsed, trust dissolved and the empire fractured under its own weight. The collateral damage was the Roman citizen, whose savings were wiped out. Today, the mechanism is the same, but the medium is digital. Central banks expand credit endlessly and print trillions with a keystroke. This is the digital echo of Rome's fatal mistake. Another form of collateral damage is the bailout. When financial systems collapse under their own reckless leverage, the costs are immediately pushed onto the public. The 2008 financial crisis, caused by a Rube Goldberg machine of debt built on toxic mortgages, imploded the global system. Governments didn't reduce debt, they printed trillions for bailouts and slashed interest rates to zero. Banks were saved, but millions of families lost their homes, jobs, and savings. The painful truth is that laws are written to protect the banks, not the savers. The system survives by sacrificing the people. This ensures that failure has no consequence for the powerful, creating a dangerous moral hazard. The formula is history's favorite trick: privatize the gains, socialize the losses. If ordinary people are the collateral damage, who exactly is the creditor that profits from this unpayable debt? While the debt is owed to the system itself, a circular web of promises, the interest payments flow upward, from the many to the few. The people who profit are those closest to the source of new money. This is explained by the Cantillon effect, which shows that when central banks create new money, the first recipients, banks, asset owners, governments, and financiers, benefit most as prices rise for their assets, stocks, real estate, commodities. By the time the money trickles down to ordinary workers as wages, prices have already risen, eroding their purchasing power. The wealth gap widens by design. The real winners of the debt crisis are the creditors who hold the paper promises. They are the financial institutions, the bondholders, and the wealthy who own assets. They are the ones who keep collecting interest. They are the ones who buy up distressed assets at fire sale prices after a collapse. The system ensures that when debt becomes unbearable, the powerful rarely pay. Banks are bailed out, corporations restructure. Ordinary people, meanwhile, lose homes, jobs, and hope.
Today, the world stands at a critical juncture. The scale of global debt is unprecedented. The tools used to postpone collapse, money printing, zero rates, endless bailouts, are running out of steam. History whispers the same warning across generations. Every empire believed it was different. Rome thought the denarius was eternal.
Spain thought endless silver made it invincible. Britain thought the pound would remain the world's reserve currency forever. All were wrong. The U.S., carrying $34 trillion in debt, faces the same paradox. Its financial system runs on the belief that debt can expand forever. But belief can shift overnight. If confidence cracks, the entire global system, built on those American IOUs, could shake. When that day comes, the dollar may face the fate of every empire that borrowed too heavily, the bill coming due. For the ordinary person, financial education is no longer optional. It is survival. The lessons learned from centuries of collapse, inflation, and default are universal. 1. Debt is a chain. Understand that debt is not neutral. It is the bloodstream of a system designed to favor lenders and asset holders at your expense. 2. Paper promises vanish. Real wealth is not digits on a screen or currency backed only by government trust. Wealth built on promises dies with those promises. 3. Hold real value. The families who survived hyperinflation and collapse held wealth in things that could not be printed away: land, productive assets, skills, and gold. These assets survive when paper promises dissolve. 4. Recognize the pattern. Every crisis is an opportunity for consolidation and a transfer of ownership upward. If you don't see the trap, you will live inside it without even realizing you're chained. The question is not whether global debt is out of control. It already is. The only choice you have is whether you face the coming cycle blind or awake. History doesn't repeat, but the pattern is always there. From the clay tablets of Mesopotamia to the mortgages of suburbia, debt enriches the creditor, burdens the debtor, and reshapes the world in favor of those who control the flow of money. The cruelest trick is that we are taught to celebrate borrowing as prosperity. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.